Well, when I asked John about this, when I interviewed him for Tom, if I recall, John, you made the observation. One other person made the same observation, which was I interviewed Charles Murray for the book about Tom, and he made the same observation, and it was that all these guys we're talking about are academics, and they probably wanted to remain academics, and it's very tough to say these things that got them labeled for that brief period of time conservative, and remain in good standing in the faculty lounge. And John, I remember saying, you want to be part of the social fabric of at the college. You don't want to be despised on campus. You don't want to be pariahs. And maybe that had something to do with it. Tom left teaching and didn't have to worry about that anymore. But if you wanted to remain in teaching, maybe this was going to cause you some problems.
Then how do you explain Glenn Loury? How do you explain John McWhorter?
Well, I think you guys are the exceptions, not the rule. Glenn, come on, Glenn, you've had kind of a on again, off again relationship with movement conservative. Yeah,
I was about to confess it. I was about to.
So is John. So is John. Frankly,
I was about to add to your. I want to hear this about John. I was about to add to the weight of your argument, though, which is that I was so lonely in the early mid 1990s, and so tired of the ostracism and the contempt and the sneering and the derogation and the ridicule and the marginalization from my co-racialist academics with whom I was coming into contact on a regular basis, that I probably tacked too far left from my position. Norman Podhoretz of Commentary Magazine wrote about me once. He says, Loury has fallen into the loyalty trap. And he was throwing my own arguments back in my face because 10 years before I had published an essay in the Public Interest in which I said, beware the loyalty trap. If you're a Black intellectual, they think you're only supposed to say certain kind of stuff. And that'll make you less effective at actually contributing to the well-being of your people because you can't tell the truth as you see it. Don't fall into the loyalty trap. I was accused of falling into the same trap. But I've lived long enough to be able to reflect upon those 10, 15 years from 95 to 2010. And I've come back to my senses, Jason.
When I was at Berkeley, which now it's a long time ago, it was 95 to 2002. The reason I left had nothing to do with the shit that I was taking, but I had to deal with a lot, people catcalling me as I walked across campus and down Telegraph Avenue, coming up to me when I was in lines at stores and saying nasty little things, calling my office phone. None of these things happened every day, but it was still part of the atmosphere. And I know if I had stayed, it would have gotten to the point that when I served on a committee, there was going to be somebody there who didn't like me. There were awards I was almost certainly never going to get because I was in bad odor. And to be honest, I would have withstood that because I'm strange. And a lot of my life when I was at Berkeley was about being a performer at night with people who didn't care about any of these issues. I would have withstood it, but I'm an odd person who doesn't mind that sort of thing, I think, as much as many people do. And at Columbia, I suspect I'm about to undergo a little bit more of that because of the way I've gotten louder since last year once we're all back on campus, and I will withstand it again. But I've got a thick skin. And some people would say too thick a skin in a way. And most people, they don't want that. And I completely understand. It doesn't mean that they're not being true to themselves. If anything, maybe they think harder. But that's hard. You don't want to be a pariah.
Yeah. Well, I am really, I said I'm hopeful that because I see more people than there were out there, talking like and writing like Saul. But I am very dispirited at the rise of the sort of progressive left and the woke movement and Black Lives Matter and the ascendancy of people like Ta-Nehisi Coates and Nicole Hannah-Jones and Ibram Kendi. I think Tom, the idea that he is not as well known as them, or that his work is not as well known, I find just tragic. I mean, it infuriates me. I think he's He's written circles around these guys. Cornel West, I would include in this group as well. And not only just in terms of his range, but the depth and the rigor of Tom's thinking, I don't think they come close to matching. And yet these folks are elevated as these deep thinkers on race. And I think that I find that very disturbing. That this is what passes for deep thinking on race today. Nikole Hannah-Jones and Ibram Kendi and Ta-Nehisi Coates. And
the race discussion is about feelings.
Yeah,
it's not about thought. And that's what is conditioning the sort of thing that you're talking about. I mean, just for example, if Ibram Kendi had short hair and his name was Anthony Jones, nobody would have any idea who he is. I think that's a very obvious thing. If his name was Anthony Jones, Tony Jones, and he just had short hair, he didn't have the dreadlocks, even with whatever he's done, nobody would have any idea.
But John, I'm
just saying that it's feelings. That's why he's more famous than Tom.
No, it's more than that. It's more than that. Well, think about Nikole Hannah-Jones, and you sort of get at this in woke racism. Where is all this deference to her coming from? There are no shortage of books on slavery or the U.S. founding. She's written none of them. And yet, why are so few historians willing to call her out? Why isn't the head of every history department at every notable institution in this country calling her out? I think
Jason,
it's cowardice.
Excuse me,
it is intellectual cowardice.
Jason, we've been calling her out here at the Glenn Show for years.
But you're the exceptions, guys.
Not just her.
That's my point.
We've been pointing out that Ibram X. Kendi was an empty suit here for years.
I know. I listened to the show.
I've been calling for erudition, mastery, deep learning, and a sophisticated intellectual frame from people who write about race for years.
Why do you have so few fellow travelers? Why are so few joining you?
That the mania behind the Ta-Nehisi Coates phenomenon had a lot more to do with the cultural orientation of white newsroom elites than it had to do with the actual lived experience, as they say, of African Americans. So you asked me a question, why have we got more people who are fellow travelers? I don't have the answer to the question, but I know where to look for it. And it's not in the Black community, it's in the structure of American intellectual and political culture, center and left of center, in journalism, in the academy, in corporate America, more broadly. And I think there's a general loss of confidence in the virtues of the American project and the American experiment. I mean, how can Colin Kaepernick have defenders, including you, John?
Oh, in the beginning, yeah. Yeah, I understood where he was coming from. But as I said to you,
an athlete, let me say this, representing the United States of America on a global stage, who thinks that holding their fist up is an appropriate gesture, is a dignified act of virtue, is a moral stand, is a coward and a fool. Okay.
Well,
aren't you afraid?
No, it's playing into a trope. It's playing into a.
Well, Glenn, let me ask
Jason,
you this.
Do you think it's so bad? I mean, yeah, Nikole Hannah-Jones, etc. They get these certain prizes, but do you feel like Coleman Hughes is obscure compared to them? Coleman is about to do TED. Yes. I happen to know.
Yeah, I do. In comparison,
I'm sorry, he's about to do what?
He's about to do TED. He's being embraced by all the proper places. I don't feel like Glenn and me are so deeply obscure.
It's not about
we're not
us.
going to get
it's
those
not about
prizes.
Us and more power to Coleman. I'm talking about the heartbeat of the culture. I'm talking about major institutions. I'm talking about the MacArthur Foundation. I'm talking about the Pulitzer Committee.
Why are they
I'm talking
the
about the faculty of the Columbia School of Journalism. I'm talking about the newsroom at the New York Times. I'm talking about the people who publish your pieces at the Atlantic.
All of those places are politically
I'm talking about the Democratic Party. I'm talking about the White House. I'm talking about Barack and Michelle Obama. I'm talking about Netflix. I'm talking about Amazon and YouTube.
Yeah.